ITEN Second Thursdays at Venture Cafe. My name is Melissa Grizzle. I'm the manager of operations for ITEN, and tonight we have another installment in our Founders Speaker Series. That's something that we've been periodically doing for years now, right, Francis?
Yep.
Okay, so we're thrilled to have Jim Blatt from Mortgage Returns come to share his entrepreneurial journey and the journey of mortgage returns, and because core belief of ITEN is, it's in our tagline, entrepreneurs helping entrepreneurs, and we really believe that we learn from each other, and we definitely, the peer-to-peer stuff is very, very important. So we're excited to have Jim here to share a story. You guys don't need to, I will do one quick advertisement. Be on the lookout for our save the date for our big launch party. I'm sure most of you know this report, and we're about to unveil the new one for 2015 year in review, and so we will be sending out save the dates for probably the very end of February, very beginning of March will be our big shindig down at T-Rex this year to launch our Fast 10, Top 10 lists and all the other fun stuff that's been going on in the tech ecosystem in 2015. So that's my one little commercial, and without further ado, Jim, take it away.
Well, thanks everyone. I'm excited to be here to tell you a little bit about how Mortgage Returns got started and our journey and where we finished. First of all, who's heard of Mortgage Returns? Okay, so who that doesn't work with ITEN for ITEN has heard of Mortgage Returns? So we're very quiet about what we do, but in the mortgage space we're a little noisier. So first, a little background on myself. I went to college at University of Colorado and then went on to WashU, got an MBA. I went to work at a big company, Edison Brothers, in retail. So nothing to do with mortgage, nothing to do with technology. Managed a shoe inventory for a big chain. Enjoyed it. Edison Brothers went out of business, and so I was trying to find something. I joined Mary Engelbright, who's a local artist and illustrator. She had a small chain of retail stores, wanted to grow. So I started, we had 4 stores. Got to 12, change of heart for Mary, and she said, this isn't really what I want to do. And so shrunk it back down to 1, and I think it's none now. But having gone through that, I said, what I really want next time is I want a seat at the table. I'm not someone who started off at 8 years old with a lemonade stand and said, I'm going to be an entrepreneur and I'm going to do all these things. I went to school, and my first job out of college was working for the government, and worked for a big company, worked for a slightly smaller company, and then said, all right, it's time for me to do it. So I looked to buy a company, and then I met Ben April, who was my partner at the time, who had this idea saying, we should automate marketing and database management for mortgage. So that sounds interesting. So, a mutual friend introduced us, talked to a few local mortgage companies that we knew, and it seemed like it made sense, so we dove in. So here's what we did. Over time, we grew. It was great. Got bigger and bigger. We had one slight blip in 14, which is a whole nother long story, but we saw some great steady growth, so it was very exciting. The thing that most of you probably know, though, is that there's one thing that got in the way of that being great news, and that was our plan. So how many of you had a plan? And even though the results look great, the plan is so and higher. But you know what? It's all about adapting. It's all about saying, where am I today, and where am I going to go? How do I keep my growth going forward? We counted up our quarters, and I think, for the 43 quarters that we were in business, revenues were up 42 of them. The 14th thing was a little messy, but, so we had a very good run. Doesn't really matter what the plan says, right? So let's go back to the beginning. So we started as database management for the mortgage industry, saying, here's these mortgage companies that have all this customer information. How many have a mortgage? How many of you regularly hear from whoever originated your mortgage? That's the problem. Because it's a big deal what your mortgage is. How much you're paying, what you should be paying, when you're ready to buy your next house, it's a problem because the guy who closes your mortgage or the lady that closes your mortgage, they get paid a lot, but they don't pay any attention to you. So that's what we tried to solve. We said, how can we help loan officers, help mortgage originators execute marketing? So we also wanted to integrate in the systems they already had and try and make their lives easier over time. So it was a great idea. How can we make you more money from your past customers? We started off by saying, we need to raise some money, because how can we do this on our own? So we went out and we said, all right, let's raise some money. We started pitching some people on our idea, and everyone we talked to said, yeah, we're not investing in ideas. Why don't you build your product? Why don't you go get some customers? Why don't you go find out if this makes sense? So we stood back and said, all right, let's throw our own money in. We did it a little cheaper, we did it a low budget, we did it on our own. We hired programmers, because Ben and I weren't programmers, and built it out and started. We got some beta testers on, we got some clients in, we started raising, a little bit of revenue. Then we went back and said, all right, now we're ready to raise money. And we were successful because we had a concept that was out in the market and it was working. Would it have been better to raise $5 or $6 million up front? Yeah, that would have been awesome. But that wasn't the market. Again, this was also, I should tell you, this was in 2004. So it was a few years ago before these types of organizations were this big. But you know what? It was good for us. Because we started off with no money in the bank. We started off with our own money invested. We started off saying, we need to convince people to use our system or we're not going to get paid. So we raised some money. We raised, I think over the 10 years in 3 chunks, we raised about $1.5 million. So we started off, I think our first raise was $800,000. So we didn't raise as much money as a lot of people do, but we just managed it tighter because we had to. So we went out to hire people, and our rule of thumb for hiring was, we're a SaaS system, so we get paid every 6 months. It's recurring revenue. Our model was, when we have $25,000 in the bank, we can hire someone, because that'll take us down to 20, and then it'll replenish. So I got an MBA in finance from WashU. But you know what? When the bank account hit 25, we can afford to hire someone. It's really not that hard. It's not that complicated. If you overthink it, you can drive yourself crazy. So we developed a sales team. We worked on our sales process. That's when I first got engaged with ITEN. So I was really more operational focused. My partner was very database focused. We needed help selling. So we came to ITEN and we presented to a group, and one of the guys was really motivated, captivated, wanted to help us, and had a lot of great ideas, had a great background, and so we just hired him. So we brought him on as our consultant, and it was great for us, because if you don't know how to sell, you got to learn from someone. I bought 20 books, I've read them all, I've read many more since then. You need someone to help you. So if you're not good at it, figure out how to become good at it. One of the things we also did, I said celebrate success on there. We used to have beer on Fridays. We started off saying, we're going to buy beer every time we get a check. Then it became every time we get a contract, and now it's every Friday. That's the progression. At our new company,
it's getting more and more frequent, right?
Yeah. So So at our new company now, they said, we do this great thing for our employees. A Friday every month we have beer. We bring in drinks, and said, Lisa, that's awesome. That's 3 times less than us. What do we do the other weeks? So what do we do well? One of the things we did really well was having financial discipline. We really laid out, month by month, here's what we know. Here's what our revenues are, here's what our expenses are, here's the cash we have in the bank, and what do we do? Because we didn't want to believe our charts that said revenues are going to explode and we should just go ahead and start hiring people, ahead of our revenue. So We also spent a lot of time on our sales process. We spent a lot of time trying to figure out how do we sell this more effectively? How do we spend more time with customers? How do we really understand what they want, why they bought us, why they continue to use us? It's probably the most important thing that anyone does. Spending time with your clients is critical. And then it was getting advice. Getting advice. So we started a board of directors. Our board of directors were guys that invested, but they were the guys that asked us the hardest questions when we raised money. They didn't invest the most money. They asked us the hardest questions. And a sign to me of a really good board of directors is when you're thinking about their questions for a month. Because they're asking you about where you're going and what pitfalls you're going to find, because they know. They've done this before. They've seen companies go down these paths. They know what you're going to run into. If they tell you to do it, that's one thing. If they ask you about it so you think about it, it's something else. So finding the right board, finding the right advice means a lot. We had terrible decisions early. We said our product will sell itself. We just hire anyone that knows a couple people in the mortgage business and we'll be great. And it was terrible. We hired salespeople all over the country, and we hired them for not very much money with this huge upside and said, you guys know people in the mortgage business, just go show them our product and it'll be great. Sales is a big theme throughout this because we really struggled with it. So we also said, we also hired people and didn't really manage them well. We said we're going to hire smart people and we're going to tell them what we want and it'll just happen. So terrible decisions around that you learn from, but if you manage finances well, none of the mistakes are fatal. By the way, I'm just going to keep talking, so if you guys have questions, please do stop me and let me know at any time. We got lucky. In 10 years, the mortgage industry has changed a ton. When we started in 2004, there were 60,000 mortgage companies out there originating mortgages. Today there are 7,000. The consolidation in our industry is unbelievable. You guys have heard of regulation. So Dodd-Frank, Graham-Leach-Bliley, those things are crushers to our industry. But they were great for us because with the consolidation, companies try and get bigger. How do you hire new loan officers to come work for you? Well, we got a great marketing platform. Industry regulations say you've got to manage content and marketing tightly as a company. We need a system to do it. So we got lucky. There were a lot of things that were very lucky for us, but that was great. One of the most important things that we did was we joined Lenders One. Lenders One is a cooperative of mortgage bankers, kind of like Carpet One. It was started as an offshoot of that. We started when they had 50 clients. Or no, I think it was 30 clients. It was founded by a couple of local guys, Tim Stern, Barry Sandweiss, and Scott Stern. So I knew them growing up. We were in the mortgage space. We talked to them. They said, why don't you guys come in and be part of our co-op? From 30 companies, today it's 250. We grew with them. There were conferences every 6 months where we would go, and there was a group of people there that were interested in the products that they selected as the best of breed. And we were one of those products. Finding a channel partner where you're not going out knocking on doors one by one can have a huge benefit. Having said that, you still have to work it pretty hard. We would go to these conferences where there was 150 mortgage companies showing up, 300 people showing up, 400 people showing up, and our booth would be there next to another booth that was a $3 billion company, and they'd have 2 people. We'd have 12. We'd bring half of our company because I didn't want anyone to walk up to our booth and not have a conversation. And when everyone's at the bar later, I want our guys there. You got to work. Just because you have a nice channel partner doesn't mean you're going to be successful. You still have to spend the time and the energy going after it. Well, after we've been doing this for 5 or 6 years, we made some decisions around culture. We made some decisions around how do we manage our staff more effectively. And we really invested in that, saying we hired a lot of smart young people, first or second job out of college, and trained them up. It's less expensive, but people that are smart and ambitious and want to do well, if you can point them in the right direction and train them, you'll do great. But you got to focus on it. You got to focus on the people side of it. And it is not in my wheelhouse, so we went out and hired someone to help us with that. A consultant that I had worked with in the past, and she was very good about saying, what are you trying to accomplish? How are you engaging your employees? And how do you get better at it? So the first thing for us was we started measuring. We started measuring employee engagement. We started measuring it 5 or 6 years ago. And part of it for me was, I was a little bit paranoid. And when you're a small company, you're very reliant on every individual. And if someone leaves, it leaves a big gap. And so I started measuring engagement because if people aren't happy, how am I going to know that? So you take an anonymous survey and find out who's happy and who's not happy, and it gives you some information on what to work on. So pretty basic in the concept, but it's really paying attention to it and working hard at it that makes a big difference. Because it was one of the harder lessons was that's where you're successful. You're successful with people, not with ideas. So it took us a while to get there, but it made sense. It's also being open to change. We started off with a value proposition of database management. If I can manage your database for you and give you this daily to-do list as a loan officer, you're going to be more successful, you're going to make more money. That's the concept, pretty straightforward. It'll sell itself. The answer was, loan officers or sales guys, they don't really want a daily to-do list. They want someone to do it for them. So automation was a huge change for us. You know, and it was the right change for us. It was saying, we're not a database management company. We're a marketing automation company. Are we technology or are we a service? We're a service. And it was difficult because we grew up saying, no, we're a technology company. We're this software as a service model. And the answer is, that's not what our clients want. We want someone to do all this marketing for them. So being open to that, listening to them. Now, I'm not going to tell you for a minute, we listened early. You know, I would go out to clients and they would say, you know, I'll never forget our first, one of our first clients, Money Tree. We went out there, we trained up all their guys, and then we went back to the office. They were all fired up, right? I mean, they were excited. They saw their hot list, who to call today. They were like, oh, I can call that guy, I can call that guy, I'm going to make more money. Went back to the office, checked our reports. Well, who's logged in? Who's done something? None of them. No one logged in. We're like, so I went back 2 days later. I'm like, we just trained all you guys. What's the matter? How come you're not using our stuff? And they're like, oh, we got busy. We went back to our desk and I had this and I had that guy and yeah, it's great and I'm going to get to it, but I haven't got to it yet. So after, you know, being told that my guys just won't do it for 4 years, we decided we better do it for them. We didn't decide right away. I mean, it's a hard thing to do, to change the nature of your business, but eventually we did. We said, you know what? Everyone loves the concept of calling these people at the right time, doing the right thing, but what they really want is for someone to do it. So we started doing it, and that helped us a ton. So what are some of the keys to success? Starts with culture, starts with people. We had all kinds of great ideas, but you know what? Great ideas don't mean anything. It means a lot if it's a two-man company and one guy has the idea and goes and does it. But if you're trying to grow, you're never going to get anywhere unless you can get the results through people. The ideas are great, don't get me wrong, but you need people to execute for you, and culture is paramount to that. It's recognize what you don't do well. I don't know how to sell. I never sold anything before. So you buy books, you get advice, you figure out what you're not good at, and you figure out how to deal with it. you also never really believe that you're great at it. I bought 2 sales books 3 weeks ago because I want to get better at it. Because there's other people that are out there that are better than us. And if you're not always looking over your shoulder, there's always someone gunning for you. So while it's great to be successful, the really successful ones are always looking over their shoulder saying, oh, what should I worry about? The other thing is, there aren't 3 keys to success. There are way more than that. So, for me, you're going to make plenty of mistakes. We made plenty of mistakes. And you can sit there and analyze them and study them and try and figure out where the root was and all these things. You can just say, I made a mistake and now this is what I'm doing. We built out, when we started the marketing automation, we built out an email marketing engine where we were going to execute email marketing. We spent 8 months, developers created this thing, and then we started sending emails and we were like, wow, they keep getting bounced back. No one's getting them. And then we found out that there's this whole whitelisting thing and the spam thing, and we scrapped the whole thing and went to ExactTarget. It sucks. But we can't, you know, if you spend a lot of time lamenting the fact that you just wasted all this time and money, you're never going to move on. So you just got to say, I made a mistake, I'm moving on, and I'm not looking behind me, I'm looking forward. The other thing that you have as an advantage is that you can move quickly. You can react to stuff that's going on in the market, and you can execute fast, and that's a great thing. Because if you lose that, it's really hard. You know, if you start to get too big and you start to get too corporate and bog things down, you won't get anywhere. The advisors, I've talked a little bit about this, having people that you can talk to that have either done this before or know the arc of where you're going matters. You have to listen to them, you have to respect them, but it's not hiring a one-time consultant. It's building a relationship with someone over time. So one of the guys on our board, David Pritchard, is great. I really like him, I really respect him, and I look forward to our board meetings for him. I didn't look forward to it for everyone on the board, but I look forward to it for him because he would always help, he would always ask good questions, and he was always available if I needed advice. You got to figure out what the facts are in your business. You can't rely on gut all the time. Gut's important for ideas, but you've got to be willing to measure it. You've got to be data driven. You've got to say, here's what success looks like, and am I achieving it? And if I'm not, there's got to be a reason why, and you might have to move on. But knowing what success looks like, being willing to measure it, even though it's hard, is critical. Because, and you should be your hardest judge. You know, the reason I have that plan, I still know what it is. You know, the board likes to joke around at our annual meetings. Well, you beat budget. How'd you do against our original plan? I missed it by 80%. That's okay. Open communications. One of the things that we did as a company is we had a monthly lunch with our employees. And every month we would start with, here's our revenue, here's our expenses, here's how much cash we have in the bank. I don't know that most people understood what working capital was, or what EBITDA was, or why this guy's telling me how much cash he has in the bank. But there's a lot going on in the mortgage industry. And there's a lot of news that you can read about the mortgage industry, especially over the last 4 or 5 years. A lot of terrible things. So it's better to be honest. This is where we are. It's a little bit open, it's a little bit, you know, it's a little bit uncomfortable, but it's the more you can show that you're being honest and straightforward with people, it's part of the culture. And it really helps. That's what we did. Find out what works for you. We were pretty conservative in our planning. We tried to be very methodical about our growth. I mean, we have a, you know, I happen to like Excel. We have a 3-year plan by month in Excel that we update every single month with where we are. Because one of the first things that one of my leaders taught me when I was at Edison Brothers. I worked for the CFO. He said, you only really have one job as the CFO, and that's don't run out of money. He said everything else is great, strategy and allocation of assets and all that. He said don't run out of money, because if you run out of money, you're in real trouble. It's true when you run the business too. Don't run out of money. Know where you are, know where you're going. Get great professional help. Who likes hiring lawyers? It's very painful. It's very expensive. But if you don't do it right, it will kill you. So, you know, I think our first contract, we actually went to Salesforce.com and copied theirs off online because we were a CRM, they were a CRM. So why not? But you need professional help. You need to go to good accountants, good attorneys, and pay for them. It's not fun, it's still not fun, but you get good advice and it pays off in the end. You know, we couldn't have sold our company if we didn't have good, solid contracts. Because people look at that at amazing levels of detail. I'm our best sales guy. I'm a terrible sales guy, but I care the most. And that matters. So I was actually talking with a friend this morning, and I said, you know, who's an entrepreneur who's, you know, kind of growing, but not growing that fast and kind of struggling. And I asked him, I said, what % of your time do you spend in sales? And if the number is less than half, you're doing it wrong. I don't know if you're doing it wrong, but that's my mark. If I'm not spending half of my time selling or in front of customers or in front of prospects, then I'm doing something wrong. Because they'll tell you the truth. They'll tell you what they like about your system. They'll tell you what your competitors are pitching them on. You have to ask them. You have to prove over time that if you ask them for advice, that you follow it. But there's a lot of great advice out there. You just got to spend the time doing it. And last is prioritizing, and that's optional. You know, it's hard to start a company, to run a company, to be an entrepreneur. You know, prioritizing is great, but you're going to work your ass off. That's what happens. You know, I get to the office at 6:30 in the morning. I left early to come here. It doesn't change because you got a lot to do. So I don't know if those are perfect keys to success, but those are mine.